What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today, we've got our Week 7 fantasy football wide receiver starts and sits for every single matchup, so make sure to tune in. If you enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at Pigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear in the comment section you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have. We'll do our best to answer them all, but with that being said, let's get right into it. Before getting into our breakdown, I want to highlight the sponsor of today's video, OddsJam. OddsJam continues to be the place that I use for all of my sports betting research, from the NFL, NBA, MLB, to daily fantasy and everything in between. But don't just take my word for it. Let me show you firsthand all the amazing tools OddsJam has to offer. Starting with their positive EV tool, which identifies situations where a single sportsbook has mispriced their line compared to the rest of the market. They're basically willing to pay a lot more so that you bet with them compared to the other sportsbook. At the end of the day, you're getting the best odds, essentially a mathematical edge and guaranteed money in the long run. But also available is OddsJam's arbitrage tool, which shows situations where the market is so mispriced that you can bet on both sides and guarantee a risk-free return. OddsJam's calculators show you exactly how much you have to bet on the over and under and what the respective guaranteed risk-free return would be. There's also OddsJam's Sportsbook tool, which consolidates all available market info, over 200 sportsbooks, and provides updates in real time and allows you to see line movement. But my personal favorite is their Fantasy Optimizer tool, which is great for those using PrizePicks, Underdogs, or other daily fantasy sites, as you get to see discrepancies between all of these sportsbooks. Imagine, PrizePicks has a Patrick Mahomes line at 200.5 passing yards, and all other books like FanDuel and Underdog have this line at 230 passing yards. Well, getting the over 200.5 on PrizePicks would be an absolute steal. Guess what? OddsJam does that for you. And the good news is, if you sign up today and use our code PIGSKIN, check the link and promo code in the description of this video, you will get 25% off your first month. OddsJam also has a 7-day free trial, so you get to try before you buy. So don't waste any more time and sign up for OddsJam using our code PIGSKIN today. Now, we kick off Week 7 on Thursday with the Jaguars and the Saints, and on paper, I like both of these wide receiver duos here. However, I will say I am more concerned on the Jaguars side of things because the status of one Trevor Lawrence is kind of up in the air. And, there's already been a situation here where the Jaguars, a little bit of an offensive slump as of late. Saints, stingy defense on top of that. It's a short week. I wouldn't be shocked if Trevor Lawrence doesn't play, but the good news is he avoided major injuries, so at least the fantasy stock for Christian Kirk and Calvin Ridley long term should be okay. However, if he's unavailable and it's, let's say, Beathard at quarterback, I would rather only play one of these guys. And honestly, I would rather go with Calvin Ridley. I think he's somebody that is more familiar with the Saints, what they do defensively, knows a lot of the guys in that division with his time from the Atlanta Falcons. So I think he can have a little bit more success. And I just think he's overall a little bit of the better wide receiver. But if Trevor Lawrence is there, I think you can argue both of them. However, I would say that the upside isn't quite, what it normally might be with Trevor Lawrence being less than 100%. Now, for the Saints side of things, Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, Olave hasn't had the most touchdown success, but I still think that he's the number one wide receiver on this team. I think he has the highest upside on this team. And I think, high-end wide receiver too. So on the flip side, Michael Thomas, look, it's not Michael Thomas of old, but guess what? He's still getting in PPR formats like 5-6 catches a game for 50, 60 yards. So that'll be between 10 and 12 points most weeks. I think that's a serviceable wide receiver to start, probably low-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3. But in my opinion, you can do a lot worse. Now, moving on, Falcons at the Buccaneers. Notice I am starting Drake London. He's been a guy that I've had on and off, starts, sits, I feel like alternating, but I'm trying to look at these matchups a little bit more so and kind of dissect where Drake London is having more success. And it seems like so far this season, where Drake London has, kind of been above average is when the Falcons have struggled to get the rushing attack going or where they're playing from behind. Naturally, that kind of makes sense. So on the Buccaneers side of things, defensively, they're decent up front. And I do think they can cause some issues for the Falcons' running attack. And if that happens, the Falcons are going to have to air it out, whether it's to Kyle Pitts, whether it's to Drake London. I think in PPR formats, you could do worse. I have him as a mid-level wide receiver too. But again, he's going to be somebody that every single week we just have to look at the matchup. For the Bucs, the Falcons defense doesn't scare me. I like Mike Evans. I like Chris Godwin. They saw the targets last week, didn't have huge numbers, but I think they will get back in that category. So I like them here, both as high-end wide receiver twos. Afterwards, Raiders at the Bears. I'm only looking at the Raiders side of things. Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers. Adams had a very disappointing performance last week, but now I'm hoping for a full bounce back from, honestly, this entire Raiders offense. It just really matters what we get at the health of the quarterback position. So are we going to get Jimmy Garoppolo? Are we going to get a less than 100% Jimmy Garoppolo? Or are we going to get, something else entirely? But Devontae Adams is still the top guy here. I know Jacoby Myers has been a very pleasant surprise, but both these guys can be fantasy relevant versus the Bears, and I think Adams gets back into that wide receiver one category. If not, then we can have the conversation, is it time to start panicking? For Chicago, look, DJ Moore was kind of always a boom or bust guy so far, and we said that with the Bears offensively, with the struggles that they've had, with the inconsistencies of Justin Fields, with the shortcomings he has as a passer. But now, without Justin Fields, it's a whole different situation because I feel like all those inconsistencies are doubled, they're tripled. And I just think that DJ Moore is in a tough situation. That entire Bears offense is in a tough situation. The positive thing is that the Raiders defensively aren't all that scary, but still, look, if you're starting DJ Moore, just realize that he is going to be extremely boomer bust, even more so than before. And to me, that's a little bit too worrisome. And for that reason, I would rather sit him. Then Browns at the Colts. I'm only starting one wide receiver apiece here for the Browns. It seems like Deshaun Watson probably won't play again. If he somehow does, then you can make a case for Elijah Moore, but I still prefer Amari Cooper here. I think he's the better overall wide receiver. If Deshaun Watson was at 100% and this offense was clicking, then you can make the case for Elijah Moore. But right now, I'll pass on it. For the Colts, Michael Pittman, I still think is the main guy. Josh Downs, I know he had some success this last week, but I think it could be a long day for this Colts offense facing the Browns defense. And I would rather only go with the top guy here with Michael Pittman. I just don't know if Josh Downs is going to be as viable here as in some other matchups. Maybe if it was a friendlier defensive matchup, then yes, we can insert him. But right now, I would rather just go with the top two guys here offensively, respectfully. Then Commanders at the Giants. I'm only looking at Terry McLaurin here. He's been, to nobody's surprise, the top guy for Washington. We all know that he's the most talented wide receiver. And Washington is one of these teams where it's tough to have multiple fantasy relevant wide receivers. And that's just the case. Until they get a legit quarterback, that will be the case. And so for that reason, Terry McLaurin, even though he's very, very talented, mid to high-end wide receiver too. Limitations at quarterback. Then I'm sitting Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson. You could argue as a drop. For similar reasons, again, one fantasy relevant guy. I know Curtis Samuel, touchdown success. I wouldn't go chasing that. I think we can have a big Brian Robinson day here. Then for the Giants, I will continue to say this. I'm sitting all New York wide receivers. None of these guys really jump out at me. I don't think any of them are an alpha. And for that reason, along with not believing in Daniel Jones, I would rather sit all the New York wide receivers. And regardless whether it's Daniel Jones or really any of the other quarterbacks on this team, I just right now offensively don't believe in the Giants. Then Lions at the Ravens. Amon-Ra St. Brown here. Coming off a huge game. I think he can follow it up here again. Seems to be back health-wise. And, I think this will be a nice game. The Lions like to air it out. So Amon-Ra should be a wide receiver one. For the Ravens, even though I typically say sit all the Baltimore wide receivers, I think Zay Flowers here versus this high-octane Lions offense can have a big game. I think this could be Lamar Jackson's biggest game so far through the year in terms of all the weeks we've seen him play. And I think Zay Flowers will be the top beneficiary, like Mark Andrews, Zay Flowers, and then it's a huge, huge drop-off. So I'm only looking at Flowers. I think he's got high-end wide receiver 2 upside. And then Jameson Williams I have as a sit. He got a long touchdown last week, so some people might go chasing that. But I would still kind of temper those expectations. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be very involved as a pass catcher this week. I will say, if Sam Laporta, he's got a questionable designation, does not play, then potentially we can have Jameson Williams as a start. But even then, he is going to be a boom or bust guy. Then Bills at the Patriots. I'm only looking at the Bills side of things. I mean, no wonder. Stephon Diggs, no-brainer, top 5 wide receiver. Gabe Davis has had success versus the Patriots, and I think New England maybe tries to give Diggs a little bit more extra attention, and then Gabe Davis can open things up. So I actually don't mind Gabe Davis. Another guy that you just got to look at the matchups, and it's going to be a week-to-week process. I think he can be, in that mid-level wide receiver 2 conversation. Then for the Patriots, I'm sitting Kendrick Bourne. Look, I know he's getting these targets, but the Patriots, the quarterback situation is awful. And even though Bourne got the targets last week, it's not like it's been consistent. It's not like it's an Adam Thielen situation in Carolina. Sure, the offense is bad. They're losing, but Thielen is getting force-fed the football every single week consistently. That hasn't been the case with Bourne. So maybe if, he puts together another week of this, then we can have that conversation. But right now, especially versus the Bills, I would rather play it safe. Don't want to invest too much in the Patriots offense. Afterwards, Cardinals at the Seahawks. Marquise Brown, I will continue to start him every single week. I know he's coming off a down week, but for what it's worth, Kyler Murray has been, designated to return from IR. I don't know if he's going to play this week or not, but that's a good thing for Marquise Brown's long-term value regardless. So we like to see that. I think he's going to bounce back here versus Seattle. Then for the Seahawks, the Cardinals defense shouldn't scare you. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, I think can both be mid to high-end wide receiver 2s, and then just too many mouths to feed afterwards with Jackson Smith and Jigba. Moving on, Steelers at the Rams. Deontay Johnson practicing, should be able to return from IR, and I think he's going to resume that number 1 wide receiver role for the Steelers, which means George Pickens is a sit, another one of these offenses where not going to be typically more than one fantasy relevant wide receiver. Then for the Rams, Cooper Kupp, since he's returned, he's been a stud just like we expected. So, I mean, he's a top 3 wide receiver pretty much every single week. Then Puka Nacua, look, it was a great run. We knew that there would be a regression once Cooper Kupp returned, but he's still a solid, I would say, high-end wide receiver too. So you can use him as such, but probably the days of wide receiver 1 numbers are over. Afterwards, Chargers at the Chiefs. I'm only looking at the Chargers side of things. Keenan Allen, obviously, and then Josh Palmer. I think Palmer is going to be, I've said this before. With Mike Williams out, he's the number 2 wide receiver on this team. Not quite as good as Mike Williams, but still fantasy viable. And, Keenan Allen, great PPR type of guy. And if something, God forbid, happens to Keenan Allen, Josh Palmer's value is going to go up even more. So I like both these guys. Allen obviously has the higher upside. For the Chiefs, no single stud wide receiver on the Chiefs. It's going to be Kelsey. It's going to be Pacheco. There's a reason why this Chiefs offense isn't high octane as before. They don't have an elite wide receiver. So until that happens, I'm not going to be throwing a dart at these kind of no-name Chief wide receivers. So I'm sitting all of them. Moving on, Packers at the Broncos. Broncos, simply put, are one of the worst teams in football. Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, I think can have success. It won't be like super, super exciting, but I think you can salvage at least 10 points from both these guys. And the upside for more is there as well when you're facing the Broncos. So I think the floor is higher than normal, and you've got a nice ceiling as well. So I'd go with them. Then for the Broncos, it's just too tough to trust this offense, this team in general. So even though the potential is there, Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, I think it's better off to pass on both of these guys moving forward. Then Dolphins at the Eagles, one of my favorite games of the week. Running backs, wide receivers, just scoring wise in general. I love Tyreek Hill. I love Jalen Waddle. Same with A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. I think as we have them listed, high upside are the first names in Tyreek and A.J. Brown in terms of the wide receiver one category. And then Jalen Waddle and Devonta Smith can also be, low to mid-level wide receiver ones as well if this game goes how we expect in terms of scoring. Then 49ers at the Vikings. So here, Brandon Ayuk, I'm going to be starting regardless. I've said this before, and it's pretty much been the case all season long. He's the number one wide receiver for the 49ers. He's the guy that's getting the most consistent targets that's not named Christian McCaffrey. And speaking of Christian McCaffrey, you see Deebo Samuel's name here with an asterisk next to it. The reason I have him listed with an asterisk is because I think he is worth a start if Christian McCaffrey doesn't play. And the reason I say that is because McCaffrey brings so much to the table as a pass catcher. He's going to see so many targets that they're going to have to get redistributed if he is not available. Also, Deebo will be used more as a rusher if Christian McCaffrey isn't there. But if McCaffrey does play, I am sitting Deebo Samuel. Then for the Vikings, Jordan Addison, KJ Osborne. Neither one of these guys is Justin Jefferson, but the Vikings are going to have to air it out. And between Hawkinson at tight end, Addison, KJ Osborne, there's going to be opportunities available. I think at a minimum, we're going to see 10 fantasy points PPR-wise from both of these guys, and they do have higher upside than that as well. But with that, we wrap up our Week 7 fantasy football wide receiver starts and sits for every single matchup. If you guys enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear in the comment section, did you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have. We'll do our best to answer them all. But in the meantime, we'll see you guys in future videos.